Before we begin studying the Han Dynasty, I'd like to take a look back at the Qin Dynasty. We had just talked about many things that the Emperor Qin did for the country of China. He did unify China into one country. Even though we think his rule was cruel, he did not think so. He built many roads, canals, and bridges, and those saved thousands and millions of lives that would have been destroyed by flooding. He also built the Great Wall of China, and it did provide an advantage during war. So no rebellion occurred during his rule. People, I guess, were afraid to rebel against him, and he died in 210 BC. So Emperor Qin basically ruled for only about 15 years. Once he was dead, his son took over, but his son did not rule for long, and people then began to revolt against the Qin government all over the countryside. So one of the peasants who led the revolt became the new emperor, and his dynasty was the Han Dynasty. Before we study the Han Dynasty, I'd like for you to look at the dates. 200 BC to 220 AD. If we just look at the numbers, it looks like the Han Dynasty only lasted 20 years. Right now, I'd like for you to stop the video, and on your study guide, I'd like for you to figure out how long the Han Dynasty lasted. Did you guess 420 years? We will do the math and talk about this in our class discussion. So let's move on and talk about the capital city of the Han Dynasty was at Chang'an. The first ruler was Liu Bang, and he founded the Han Dynasty, born a peasant, and became a military leader. He called himself Han Gaozu, which meant high ancestor. From this map you can see how large the Han Dynasty really is. The empire grew from about 20 million people to more than 60 million people. Han Gaozu knew the importance of having the support of his people. If you remember from the Zhou Dynasty, the king gave the nobles land. So Han Gaozu gave the nobles land back and allowed them to rule as they wished. So he won over the peasant farmers by lowering taxes. So in turn, people really did respect him. Just as if we learned, the Chinese dynasties did have trouble with invaders from the north. If you recall, Emperor Qin built the Great Wall to try to keep out invaders. But they still came under Han Gaozu, and he was wounded in battle while defending his city, and he died. So with a new dynasty leader, they decided to do things differently. So instead of allowing the nobles to govern their land, they took back the land from the nobles and they appointed government officials to rule and to report back to the king. I'm sure the people under the new Han rulers were not happy that they changed things once again. Would you be happy if your land was taken back from you and you had to start over again with a new ruler? One of the greatest Han leaders was named Han Wudi, and he realized that people who were invading from the north were nomads. The Great Wall did not extend to the whole northern section of the Han Dynasty, so he decided to extend and build on to the Great Wall to defend his dynasty. In some cases, however, he paid these nomads with silk, rice, or money so that they would not attack. He realized that that's what they were after. What he did was he sent people called ambassadors to make peace with his enemies. What is an ambassador? An ambassador is a representative of a government, usually lives in a foreign country or goes to other countries as a representative. Please write the definition for ambassador on your study guide. As in the ancient world, today we also have ambassadors. We have ambassadors from the United States who live in other countries, and we also have ambassadors from other countries who live here in the United States. Han Wudi was successful in bringing peace, and so he started to set up his government by using civil service. A civil service government is that people had to take tests to earn their jobs. The people with the highest scores got the job. And so in time, his test became the civil service exam. We still use this exam today. The Chinese chose their government officials this way for 2,000 years. Now, students did prepare for these tests, and they studied law, history, and the teachings of Confucius. They were not allowed to do physical labor or play sports, so after many years of schooling, the students took the exams. A lot of times, only 1 in 5 passed. So people who failed the exams, they worked and did other jobs in the government, but they didn't have as important of a job. Even though only the highest grades received government jobs, at least all the jobs were open to people of all classes. So this was more fair than what we have seen in the past. Because of the success of this dynasty, we would consider this the golden age. And what that means is things were happening and improving. First of all, Confucianism was brought back and became the official teaching, along with the philosophy of Taoism. Remember, that is bonding with nature. New inventions help Chinese workers produce more. So we're going to take a look at some of these technology and inventions. The first one, of course, is the wheelbarrow. And it was invented by someone in their army, and they were able to have the soldiers, then army soldiers, carry more things. So, of course, it makes your army more efficient. Let's look at a picture of a wheelbarrow. As you can see, as far as the accomplishments, there are water wheels that they invented, which sort of looks like a shadoof, but in a wheel form. And also, they discovered the iron drill bits. If you look at the top picture, it almost looks like a pair of scissors. The bottom picture is a modern day drill bit. For those of you who help around the house, as far as making things, perhaps you've seen a drill bit before. That is what goes into a drill, so you can drill holes in walls so that you can put things on walls. So they invented iron drill bits to help them to make their life easier. More inventions or accomplishments include the making of paper. They made paper from worn fish nets, bark from trees, and cloth. The Chinese invented the rudder to steer ships and a new way to move the sails of the ships. These changes allowed ships to sail into the wind for the first time. So Chinese merchant ships could travel to the islands of Southeast Asia and into the Indian Ocean. As a result, China established trade in India and the Mediterranean Sea. One of the most important inventions was the seismograph. We also use seismographs today, but they don't look anything like this. Inside there was a stick, and there was also a ball inside, so if there were earthquakes, then this would shake, this jar. It has, I guess, lizards on the side, and what would happen is wherever the stick would move or hit that part of the jar, a ball would come out of the lizard's mouth and into the frog's mouth below. So people who are watching the seismograph would be able to tell which direction the earthquake came from. People during this dynasty learned more about civilizations to the west of China. They learned about horses, and they wanted to bring more goods into their country. So they wanted to import goods from other countries west of China. So in turn, because of all their accomplishments and inventions, they exported goods to other countries. And this was done through caravans. If you remember from our vocabulary words, caravans are groups of people traveling together to trade. As you can imagine, the Silk Road was not actually a road. It was the name given to trade routes for goods going to and from China. So traders traveled with silk and returned with lumber, horses, and other products that the Chinese people did not have. The Silk Road was a name given to any route that led China to eventually Rome. It was a 4,000-mile trip. At one end was China, at the other end was Rome. Each had something the other wanted. Rome had gold and silver and precious gems. China had silk and spices and ivory. Ideas also traveled along the Silk Road, and these are ideas that affected everyone. So the Romans were not surprised to find another civilization hidden over the mountains, but they had been looking for the silk people for a very long time. They discovered pieces of silk from the people they conquered, and silk quickly became popular in Rome. But the Romans did not know who was making this wonderful material. The people they conquered did not know who was making silk either. They simply traded for it. So the Romans would send out people to find silk, and they never really did. The rewards were great, but the dangers were many. It was incredibly dangerous to travel along the Silk Road. You faced desolate white-hot sand dunes in the desert, mountains, winds, and poisonous snakes. Very few traders made the whole trip. They worked in relays, and each trader would go a certain distance, exchange their goods for the other goods, and then hopefully return. Thieves and robbers would rob people along the Silk Road. So you say to yourself, why would you put yourself through this? Well, the money that they gained from profits of selling silk outweighed the risks to some people, and they just kept moving forward, and they were hoping that they would return home, and they would also hopefully make a lot of money. It was amazing that Chinese traders did not even have to travel to Africa or Europe to sell their goods, but silk was definitely found there. As I said, the Romans really liked silk and wanted to find out who made them. So on your study guide now, I'd like for you to look at the map and write down at least 3 things that were found throughout this area of the world. What was exciting is that Chinese culture was being introduced to other civilizations.